'Twas the start of a new year when all through the land not a critic was silent, they still had films to pan. The releases were packed throughout 2014 as I reclined in my seat to watch the big screen. There were original scripts that charmed and amazed, so it'll be difficult to decide which gets the most praise. Reboots and remakes, we had a few, but sequels were many and fun to review. Most of these follow-ups were not invited, but by and large, they mostly delighted. Book adaptations made us think and cry, but dystopian futures need to say goodbye. The jokes they delivered were often hit or miss, but certain comedies became impossible to dismiss. After years in the making, we were finally treated, while elsewhere superheroes remain undefeated. Low-budget entries still managed to impress, as for where they rank, we'll have to assess. The gunplay was fast and the action was loose. We even got 2 movies with the son of Zeus. The animated characters were colorful in flight, but which was the best? You'll have to sit tight. The Purge may have proved that it wasn't a fluke, but who can forget the sounds of Babadook? When the stories of fiction unfortunately failed, there were still documentaries left to unveil. On a Beach with a Priest or Dancing with Hook, there were a number of films we shouldn't overlook. If you saw them all, it was quite a sight. For those that didn't, this is Movie Night! Hello and welcome to Movie Night's first annual yearly retrospective. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. 2014 was a fantastic year for cinema, and in this reviewer's opinion, perhaps the best of the century. I assembled a list on Letterboxd.com of all the notable films that I saw or wanted to see that were released last year. So for purposes of context, the highlighted films you're looking at now were those that I didn't get a chance to see yet. Inherently, I've always believed that creating lists like this so near the end of the year is a pointless exercise, as there's no conceivable way to see every feature in time. But the film reviewing community is an impatient one, so even though I ran out of time to see them all, I did see well over 80 releases from 2014, which is by far a personal record for me. My picks are obviously subjective and biased, but hopefully you'll enjoy this retrospective just the same, and maybe even discover a few films you missed out on. I also encourage you to check out my full reviews for tonight's selections by visiting the links below. In addition to ranking my top 10 favorites, I'll also be awarding superlatives to 14 other pictures. So let's begin with the first of these bonus categories. Funniest movie of the year was an easy pick, 22 Jump Street, a fantastic comedy that expands on the original concept with self-referential humor, great physical gags, and impeccable timing from the hilarious cast. And Ice Cube's freak-out scene in the buffet is perhaps the hardest I laughed all year. My pick for 10th best movie of 2014 goes to Grand Budapest Hotel. Wes Anderson has once again crafted a wholly unique, vibrant, and exciting narrative oozing with personality. 3 parallel stories are shared in 3 separate aspect ratios, but Ralph Fiennes turns in a goofy and endearing performance that's impossible to look away from. A surprisingly good time, this is an obvious choice to begin my list. I only watched a few documentaries last year, but the Roger Ebert biopic Life Itself really moved me. It's a touching and honest portrayal of a man I personally admired. It intercuts talking head interviews about his humble beginnings with raw moments of his final days in the hospital. A sad but necessary picture, this is required viewing for all critics. Grabbing the 9th spot is David Fincher's latest, Gone Girl. This is an unpredictable, sexy, and smart thriller that had me engrossed every step of the way, and Rosamund Pike gave one of my favorite performances of the year. A modern twist on the classic abduction thriller story, it also had a chilling score. Weirdest movie of the year has to go to Under the Skin, a slow-moving but captivating character study of Scarlett Johansson, a curious individual who obviously doesn't belong here. It's a moody and deceptive film that never spells anything out for you. I honestly didn't care much for it, but it made me think, and I can appreciate that. It's fitting that the 8th slot goes to the 8th film in a franchise, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Excellent motion capture CGI set within a ruined future made for some great action sequences and effective emotional moments too. This is the sort of layered and complex narrative the Apes series has been waiting for, and it totally delivered. I can't wait to see where they take the long-running series next. I'm sure plenty will disagree, but I felt Snowpiercer was the most overrated picture of the year. This South Korean science fiction action thriller about the last surviving members of the human race, who were stuck on a speeding train, is a really fascinating concept, but it boils down to nothing more than a thinly veiled and predictable commentary on the class system. Some unique ideas and gritty imagery, but ultimately I wasn't that impressed by it. I had been anticipating my 7th pick for years, so when I finally saw The Fault in Our Stars, I was really overcome with emotion. My friend John Green wrote a beautiful story, and Shailene Woodley and Ansel Elgort provide fantastic performances that will make even the strongest of constitutions break down and cry. A real and faithful romance story worth seeing at least once. Again, this is likely a controversial pick, but I felt the reboot of RoboCop was severely underrated by critics and audiences alike. I preferred this faster and more emotionally charged version than the clunky original. The action was intense and the story more interesting, but I seem to be in the minority here, so it's unlikely this will spark a new trilogy of cyborg crime fighters. My sixth favorite of 2014 is the Lego Movie. Even to this day, I'm a ridiculously huge fan of the toys, and this fast-paced, cameo-filled, humor-laced action-adventure gave me everything I could have hoped for. The voice talents of Chris Pratt, Will Ferrell, and Will Arnett only sealed the deal. It's not only flashy and funny, but it shares a really touching message that adults and children alike can appreciate. Produced for less than $1 million, my favorite low-budget film was Blue Ruin, a methodical revenge thriller that portrays the real dilemmas of plotting a murder and trying to get away with it. The cast of relative unknowns provide great performances, and director Jeremy Saulnier exhibits some beautiful shots and scenery. Definitely check this one out. Number 5. Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. A masterful combination of believable dialogue, pitch-perfect acting, and one incredible camera move that lasts for the entire 119-minute picture. There are obviously edits hidden throughout, but the illusion of a single unbroken Steadicam shot that effortlessly glides from one setup to the next is beautiful to watch unfold. Michael Keaton draws from personal experience with a nuanced performance as a washed-up movie star looking to find relevance again. And I can only hope he'll receive some recognition from the Academy for his work here. A movie many probably haven't heard of, Calvary gets my pick for the most overlooked picture of the year. Brendan Gleeson plays a patient Irish priest who has just received a very credible death threat, but must see to his flock of parishioners and wayward neighbors before dealing with his would-be murderer. This is a slower and quieter narrative, but a very engaging and interesting one, and I strongly recommend checking it out. Containing my favorite performance of the year, Nightcrawler comes in at number 4. Jake Gyllenhaal is remarkable and frightening as a bottom-feeding opportunist who will do anything for a leg up in the world of late-night news journalism. The music, cinematography, and story are all top-notch, but it's the exciting climax that was perhaps the most thrilling sequence I saw all year. I don't watch a lot of horror movies, but The Babadook was absolutely the scariest I have seen in a long time. Australian director Jennifer Kent paints a haunting and visceral experience of an unseen entity that terrorizes a single mother well past her breaking point. The lighting, shadows, and sound effects all elevate this original and unsettling story, but it's Essie Davis's heartbreaking performance that holds it all together. Top 3 territory now. Guardians of the Galaxy was perhaps the most fun I've had at the cinema in ages. A fast, hilarious, action-packed superhero film that gets every ingredient of its massive recipe correct. Chris Pratt is now a bona fide movie star, and from the opening moments of him dancing to Redbone to an explosive climax, it's impossible not to smile and enjoy yourself while watching this picture. It may not have been deep or philosophical, but it was a fresh take on an old formula, and one I'll have no problem rewatching again and again. They can't all be good though, which is why Left Behind gets my pick for worst movie of the year. At this point, Nicolas Cage has become a pathetic caricature of himself, taking any awful project that promises a paycheck. This unnecessary remake of the terrible Kirk Cameron Christian propaganda picture of the same name is a total mess. Forget that it's poorly made, has cringeworthy dialogue, and iMovie quality visuals. It's also a blatant insult to the very religion it's attempting to promote. The fact that this saw actual theatrical release is a mockery of cinema. This is easily Cage's worst film, and that's saying something. Avoid at all costs. My runner-up for Best Film of the Year goes to Edge of Tomorrow. A breath of fresh air in the bloated sci-fi action genre, Tom Cruise is at his best here. The visuals and action are absolutely incredible, but it's the dry wit and humor of the fast-paced narrative that makes it work so effortlessly. The repeating time loop concept made famous in Groundhog Day receives a big-budget, alien-infested treatment here, and it totally works. I only wish more people had paid money to see it. Now for some honorable mentions. These are the pictures that I scored a 9 out of 10, but unfortunately didn't quite make my list. The musical drama Whiplash has astounding performances from Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, and a fierce and emotional film that pulls you in from the start and never lets go. How to Train Your Dragon 2 was an excellent follow-up to one of my favorite original animated pictures of the last few years, while X-Men Days of Future Past found an intriguing way to combine the casts of yesteryear and today into a fun, action-packed thrill ride. Richard Linklater's Boyhood was a cinematic marvel, portraying the same group of characters over 12 years of their lives. and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 fixed most of the flaws of its unneeded predecessor with some high-stakes battles and complicated characters. And finally, my pick for the best movie of 2014 goes to Interstellar. No surprise here, Christopher Nolan's latest effort is also his most ambitious, a modern masterpiece of everything I appreciate about cinema. It had ideas, images, and sounds I had never even dreamed of before, packaged together in an intriguing sci-fi story about love, hope, and loss, anchored by spectacular Oscar-winning actors. The type of inspirational and moving experience that stays with you long after the credits roll. This is one picture that truly resonated and was my favorite of the entire year. Well, there you have it, the 24 films I felt deserved special mention as we enter a new year. All in all, I watched 330 movies in 2014 and reviewed almost half of them. So make sure to check out my Letterboxd page for a complete list of everything I saw and reviewed. As great as last year was, though, 2015 is promising to be even bigger, especially for franchises, as Fast and the Furious 7, Avengers Age of Ultron, Jurassic World, Terminator Genisys, Spectre, and Star Wars Episode 7 are all being released in the next 52 weeks. I, for one, cannot wait. Before we finish tonight, though, let's take a quick look at some of your tweet critiques. If you see a new movie in theaters, tweet your review with the JPMN hashtag. Next week we'll be reviewing 3 recent releases: Into the Woods, The Interview, and Taken 3. Once you've seen these movies, share your opinions by voting in the polls below or by leaving a comment review. If you'd like to watch more Movie Night episodes, check out the related videos on the right or click subscribe to be notified of all new content. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Instagram, or Letterboxd for updates between episodes. Once again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thank you for watching and listening. Until next time, have a happy new year and a good movie night.